Welcome to Experience Innovation, a podcast series brought to you by Accenture Interactive in Australia. In this series, we're talking with industry leaders to discuss the latest in digital innovation and the experience battlefield. Now over to our host for today.
Hi, my name is Melissa Dean. I'm the Managing Director at Accenture Digital. Today, our guests are some of the hottest marketers in the industry. We're going to dish about our lives of living and breathing customer experience, but our specific guest this week is no stranger to disruption. Dan Jermyn, Head of Data Science at Commonwealth Bank Australia. Welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Lovely to have you. Good morning. And also Tom McQueen, Head of our Fjord Experience Studio here as well. Thank you for joining us in the studio.
Good to be here. Thanks, Melissa.
I'm really happy to have you here. And, especially in an exciting environment where we're talking about, digital transformation, how it's starting with reimagining customer experience. Dan, as we know, I think that you are no stranger to disruption, being as part of one of the leading financial services banks in Australia. Can you tell us a little bit about your role at Commonwealth Bank and what is keeping you busy at night? What's keeping you up?
Opportunity and excitement. I absolutely love what we do. So much energy, and if I am kept up at night, it's just the excitement for what's coming next, really. So I run the data science team at Commonwealth Bank of Australia. We think it's the largest data science practice in Australia, which is a great privilege and a very exciting space to be in. But I also help with our customer engagement engine, which is how we communicate with our customers across all of our channels. How do we create a really personalized experience for them?
Amazing. And tell me a little bit, and maybe it's a question to both you and Tom, would you say you're a company that focuses on data or creativity?
I think you have to focus on both, and I think the real kind of exciting stuff happens when you have a little bit in both of those columns. So CBA would certainly call ourselves a data company. I think all big companies these days would say they're a data company, right? But CBA, we really take that seriously. We've undergone a huge investment program and really a fundamental rethinking of how we organize ourselves to make the best of this huge resource we have, our data. I mean, if you think about the volume of transactions going through the Australian economy and how many of those are coming through our data centres every second, the number of customers we have, we're the largest bank in Australia. We have a huge wealth of data, so the ability to connect that and unlock the value in it to provide better customer experiences is absolutely key. But as I say, it's then what you do with that. So I think the important thing is to be creative in how you use the opportunity that you have. If you think about our customer engagement engine as an example, we use that to notify customers of all sorts of benefits that they might be entitled to, sometimes beyond the immediate remit of the bank. If you think about government rebates, we have a lot of information, there's a lot of open data available that helps us to identify customers who may be entitled to perhaps government rebates, refunds from the state. And we can use our technology to alert them to this and make very real for them the fact that we're on their side and enhancing their financial well-being, and that's not just through the use of the bank's own products.
Interesting. And just on that point, so creativity and customer expectations. Tom, what are your thoughts on that, especially in the financial services industry?
Yeah, I agree with it. Everything you've been saying, Dan, around how data really drives those experiences and how important it is in terms of personalization, and some really cool stuff as well CBA is doing around the rebates and helping customers get on top of their financial well-being. I think when it comes to creativity, it's how do we create those experiences that truly differentiate the brand, that surprise and delight customers, and that just position CBA as a really different kind of experience than a utility, which is, I guess, how we usually think about banking and banking products and services.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. I think, banking is fundamental to most people's lives. It's a really important responsibility that we have to our customers. I think the responsibility goes beyond just what we need to do in a highly regulated environment and what customer expectation is. We have to exceed that. I think with the position that we have as such a large company, the incredible capability that we have with our data and with our advanced machine learning, it's important that we're always thinking about what's next. A lot of the time, I think we're charting new territory with this, and the Commonwealth Bank, I think, has been famous for innovation, and it's certainly one of the things that I love most about my job is the remit that we have to really be creative about how we use this incredible resource we have at our disposal. And I think it's one of the things that kind of really drives me and drives the team to use this this incredible capability that we have to do things that haven't been done anywhere else in the world before and wouldn't originally have been thought of as things that a bank might even do. If you think about personalization, over the course of the next year, we're going to do about 3 billion personalized messages within our mobile app, for example. Now, how do you keep each single one of those relevant, interesting? I mean, it's not about mass billboard marketing. It's about personalized, one-to-one, relevant conversations.
It's a total journey experience.
Correct.
So it's the experience innovation, podcast series, and you're hearing all these buzzwords that are happening. But, how can brands and businesses have real relationships with our customers? How are you attacking that or, approaching that at the bank?
Well, it fundamentally comes down to trust. How do we manifest that, and how do we show to our customers that we are the bank that we say we are, and provide the service that they can be proud of? And trust and transparency are absolutely key to this, particularly, and I have obviously a keen interest in transparency and trust when it comes to AI. This is one of the kind of live topics at the moment when you start introducing deep learning and very complex machine learned algorithms that are quite hard for humans to break down. How do you make sure that you're using those in an ethical, transparent way and you're making the right kinds of decisions with those? Your intentions may be good, but you have to put the right guardrails and the right systems in place to be able to know that you are doing good.
Absolutely. And we talk about things like, machine learning and AI and, taking over and robots, whichever. But another comment made today, organizations are led by people. And, we talk a lot about innovation, but dare we take any risk? So tell me, how do you talk about innovation, but then match it with habits? What are you doing, to make sure that you're staying ahead and cutting through?
There's quite a lot in that question you just asked, and I like it. And I'll tell you why. It unpacks a few things that I think about a lot within the context of the organisation that I work in. And one of the things I'm most proud about over the journey that I've been here for the last 2 years with Commonwealth Bank, and I know prior to that, is if you think about our flagship AI implementation, which is the customer engagement engine, that started with people. This is a means for us to connect with our customers in a very meaningful way. So what we do with that engine is use all of our data, all of our smarts, to try to understand what is the next best conversation to have with a customer. What's the most relevant thing right now, whether it's service, whether it's about a product that they have that they could be getting more of, whether it's a payment that's due that we could be reminding them about to avoid fees. It's a very kind of personal and customer-centric approach to begin with. And then the actual distribution channel for that, the first thing that we did was go out to all of our branches. We've got the largest bank branch network in Australia, and our people are our best asset. I mean, I've, as you can tell from the accent, worked in a lot of different places across Europe and in the US, and our frontline is second to none. Incredible customer focus and incredible experience if you go in and speak to those guys. And we wanted to make sure that they had the absolute best tools at their disposal to be having really great conversations. And their intentions are always great. They always want to talk about the next best thing to talk to the customer about. But when you know the person, it's relatively easy. When you're being confronted with lots of people coming into branch and we hold reams and reams of data about them, how do you stay on top of what that thing is? That's what the next best conversation was all about, really, creating that connection between the bank, and in this case the member of staff who's right there speaking to the customer, trying to be relevant, trying to be helpful to them in the moment, and then the member of staff does what they do. We've effectively tapped into this incredible resource, the people that we have, but started them off on the right foot so that the customer feels like we know them, we understand them, we value them, they can trust us, and then the member of staff has a brilliant conversation from a great footing. So I think that's one of the key points for us is whenever we're thinking about AI and its use throughout the business, and we're certainly very excited about it, how do we keep it human? How do we make sure that we're keeping that level of connectivity between our customers and our purpose, and they understand that we're there for them and their financial well-being?
It's like that relevant and personalized experience wherever they are.
Indeed, yes. So the customer engagement engine is connected to all of our channels. So actually digital was one of the later channels for us to migrate across. We already had a great degree of personalization, a very sophisticated digital entity, and our digital platforms are very innovative, have been for quite considerable time. Our approach really was to make sure that we were being consistent with that across all of our channels. So by the time we'd migrated out across all of our frontline channels, we already had this tremendous digital asset that gives us a kind of real-time view of what customers are thinking and doing. Once you connect those together, that's when it becomes really powerful. And that's when you really need AI to kind of take over and help you really to make sure that you can do this. The scale that we're running at is unimaginable. We have 200 advanced machine learning models running across the customer engagement engine, and they refer to 157 billion data points. I mean, there is simply no way that we could have done this even a few years ago without AI.
I'm curious to understand, you lead the data science team at CBA, and I think we know of innovation and experience is more than a team that has to do that. It needs to become a culture.
Indeed.
An understanding of how to harness that across the organization. Perhaps you can talk a little bit about how you're trying to build that sort of culture of understanding data and using it to improve the experiences that your customers receive.
Yeah, it's a great question, and obviously, fortunately, within the area that I directly work in, they're all data heads, and I think you can see a shift even now versus 5 years ago. The importance that's placed on data and the kind of importance and the fact that those departments that used to be off to the side somewhere in a dusty basement are now sitting at board level and are really kind of integral to the bank strategy is one thing. And then the second thing is to kind of how do you make sure that those kind of more traditional, let's say, areas of an organization, in our case a bank, the product teams, the finance teams, how do they get to untap the great value that we have through our data? And it's through communication, it's through creative thinking as well. How do we use the technology that we have to apply in other areas of the bank that we might not previously have thought of? It's also important for us to lead on this. So in my team specifically, and with data science as a deliberate approach, we have teams who are kind of embedded within the business, working directly on their problems, and rather than being a kind of subservient thing where somebody will say, oh, do you know what, maybe for this particular model we'll get a data scientist, actually those people are now engaged up front to get to understand the background and are vastly better suited to understanding where machine learning could or could not be helpful, and we're getting much better outcomes from embedding these experts within the real, where the rubber hits the road with regard to the business and our customers. And then secondarily, we also have what we call our AI labs, and this is an area where we have some of the very, very best people in the world, some unbelievable talent, genuinely world leading. And they are doing things that are at the cutting edge right now anywhere in the world. It's a great Australian success story, and we want to be that bank for our customers. So they have the remit to kind of really be creative about uses of deep learning, what comes next, biometrics. We have some incredible success stories from that that we're working on, and we're very excited that we're going to be rolling those out. So watch this space.
Just on that, can you give us an example of, it sounds like you're taking an ordinary moment and turning it into something that's quite extraordinary. Can you give an example from a customer, what the benefit of a customer would be?
Using our connectivity that we now have across channels, the same experience, the customer might get a push notification in real time to say, hey, we've noticed this transaction. Is it okay? Is it not? The customer then immediately within their hand can say, yes, I know this transaction. I just bought this thing overseas for $500 and I understand that. Yes. And then there's no impact to the customer experience, or no, I don't recognize this. And then we use our click-to-call connectivity. So you can then, with the device that's in your hand straight there with the message that you have, go straight through to the relevant part of our organization. There's no kind of press 1 for this, press 2 for that. You're already pre-authenticated through your use of the app, and you go exactly where you need to as quickly as you possibly can. It's that kind of thing that really kind of, I think, raises the bar for what customer experience should be with a bank these days.
So tell me a little bit around, it came up today across the board, customer experience management. So there were kind of 4 or 5 themes. One was understanding customers. The other one was data-driven decisions. The other one was orchestrating experiences. And the final one was making it all relevant. And Tom, that kind of ties back to what we do at Fjord in terms of that full customer journey experience. But I'm keen to get your perspective on how relevant that is, even not only for banks like Commonwealth Bank, but also just in the financial services industry, and what advice you would give. And Dan, you can give some advice back to Tom as well.
Yeah, I think it's still always putting the human at the center of everything that we do, really understanding their needs and expectations. It's understanding, the role data can play and enhancing that experience and delivering products and services to them. And increasingly, what we see when we're designing these sort of experiences is understanding the capabilities of AI, machine learning, this amazing new world of technology that's at our fingertips, and working with experts that probably are within your team, Dan, and really understanding the potential of this kind of technology and how it can transform the experiences that we can deliver to customers.
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful things that I heard from this morning was about that connection to purpose.
Yeah.
And this is something I feel deeply strongly about, and it's inherent within the culture of certainly the organisation that I work to. How do you make sure that you stand for something in the way that you're using the incredible capability that we all have access to now? It's being democratized. And I come back always to this idea about we always intentionally try to do good things, but how do we know that we are actively doing good things? How do you have to actually measure this in a meaningful way? It's one of the ways that we've gone about this within the Commonwealth Bank is our purpose is to enhance and improve and help our customers with our financial well-being. And we created a first of its kind, global first actually in consultation with the University of Melbourne, Financial Wellbeing Index. So this is a peer-reviewed published scale that allows us to try to understand financial well-being for our customers in a measurable way. What does financial well-being mean?
Yeah.
And we do this in two ways. We survey people to try to get their perceptions.
Yep.
And then obviously as a bank, we have access to the raw data and we can try to understand what we perceive to be actually happening and overlap the two. And you see an interesting disjoint sometimes between what people perceive their financial well-being and what the kind of raw underlying data would tell you. And one of the most fascinating things about this piece of work is that you would think that one of the prime indicators of financial well-being would be income, and of course it is incredibly important, but actually the most important factor of all was some of the behavioural aspects.
Yeah.
So how does an individual save or spend, how closely do they monitor their credit card spend?
Yeah.
You can have, and we saw frequently, two sets of people with exactly the same kind of environmental factors, exactly the same kind of income, but very, very different ratings for financial well-being. And the really powerful thing about that is because we can measure it, we can do something about it. Experimentation then becomes incredibly important.
Exactly,
we can actually use our infrastructure to try to nudge or help customers to exhibit or to use the kind of behaviours that we know will help in the long term improve their financial well-being.
That's great. And you're using that to measure progress, but also success as well.
Correct. Yeah.
Great.
I mean, that's effectively what we stand for. So if we're not doing that, what are we doing? Everybody who works within the team, and we talked about the culture and how important that is. Culture of innovation is great. Culture of producing great outcomes for the people that you serve, I think, is even better.
Yeah. And from my observation, CBA has always been on the cusp and, the cutting edge of, digital innovation. So you've always been, one step ahead. Bezos said, quite famously, we are not innovating fast enough. Go work out why this is not happening. How do you stay ahead and how do you kind of push and drive your team to innovate? And do you feel that you're moving fast enough?
I always want to go faster. I think it's inherent in the type of job that we do that, if you're lucky enough to be in the position that I'm in and work with the incredibly smart people that we have in our organisation and great leaders and great technology, you always think you can do more with it. And I absolutely, where I stand today is miles beyond where I thought we would be 12 months ago, and who knows, I am incredibly excited about what the next 12 months will lead. But it is challenging. We know everybody else is thinking this way too. We have to stay hungry. We have to make sure that we're always challenging ourselves to think in ways that we hadn't previously. And one of the really important ways in which we try to do this is through diversity as well. If you look at the team that I run, there are all sorts of people within that team. There are a bunch of people who you would expect, PhDs, people who've worked in academia, real kind of gearhead data scientists, but also a bunch of people who've come straight through our
Where are you
frontline
finding
experience.
these people? It's amazing.
All over that. People that flock to, I think, a good purpose and a good environment. So I like to think that we're kind of, the momentum that we're generating within the bank is helpful within that. But from within our own people, I talked about our front line being our best asset. I really do mean that.
That's great.
I have 6, 7, maybe more than that, people working directly in my team on the most technically advanced version of its kind in the world. We won an award for it the other day, won several for it. So the customer engagement engine as a kind of a means to communicate across channels and decide on the next best thing to talk to customers about. We think we have the best one in the world. Many of the people driving that are people who not very long ago were on that front line in a branch on the call centres dealing directly with customers, and that's one of the ways that we're able to kind of keep ourselves with the customer always in mind and make sure that the way we're using this is helpful.
It's very true. So diversity definitely brings diverse thought. So yeah, it's something we're big believers in as well. And in terms of going back to, you were touching on earlier, we talked about kind of the exceptional every day. So why should CBA seize like those ordinary moments? And we touched on around how experiences can alter and transform the everyday. So like VR and AI and AR and all that kind of stuff. And in that being said, then contradictory this morning, one of the featured speakers talked about, the top 10 attributes, essential attributes for hiring in 2020. And number 3 was around creativity. You're leading a team of data sciences. What is that balance, and what would you recommend? Like, I touched on it earlier. Where are you finding the people? Where are you getting them? And how are you looking at, in terms of making sure you have that diverse team going forward?
It's one of the joys of my job is to be able to be in a position to try to do that. And I constantly get surprised by the people we have, and just having really great relationships with our broader team and integrating with our business partners. You see the value that we get from having a diverse workforce. I try to adopt a kind of mosaic approach. I mean, I like to think I am quite good at some stuff, but there's a whole bunch of stuff that I am terrible at. And so it really takes a lot of different people with very, very different skill sets to do that. So I think some of the best, most creative ideas come from putting a group of people who have very different opinions or different viewpoints about things in the same space. And I've seen this time and time again from having the team kind of work together with a very different skill set, a diverse skill set amongst the group. It works continually, and it continues to work for us, and we will recruit from all over the place.
That's great.
I think one of the things that I love about Australia, I think the academic community, certainly in technology and data science, is incredibly strong. We get some incredible talent from the universities locally, and it's always really satisfying to see young talent have the chance to work on something within the local area that's really kind of genuinely
very entrepreneurial too.
Yeah,
some really great, bright minds.
And not constrained by a kind of corporate mentality. We put guardrails in place to make sure nobody hurts themselves. But yeah, we get some. I walk the floor every day, and there'll be people working on something that I haven't asked them to do, and I didn't know they were doing, and it'll blow my mind. You don't get that by recruiting another sort of 50 people who are exactly like me.
Love it. It's great. Dan, look, thanks for being so open and sharing your thoughts as part of our Experience Innovation series. We really appreciate you joining Tom and I.
Yeah, thanks, Dan.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Tom, thanks again as well for joining us from Fjord, our leading experience design studio. And we look forward, Dan, to catching up with you in a few months' time and seeing what the future holds for CBA. Cheers. Thanks.
A special thank you to all our guests for taking the time to talk to us today. For more details, visit accenture.com.au and connect with the team via Accenture Australia's LinkedIn page. You've been listening to Experience Innovation, a podcast series brought to you by Accenture Interactive.